Hello and welcome back to coverage of the World Magic Cup. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Simon Gertzen, and we've got stage 2, round number 1 of a potential 3 here for these teams. Here we have Hong Kong versus Slovakia. We're going to start things off on our middle table, which has the two heavy hitters from these teams. That's Lee Shi Tian versus Ivan Floch, and it looks like we're underway straight away here on the Hong Kong side of things, with Warlord's Fury being basically cycled here from Lee Shi Tian.
Yes, and this is a super interesting matchup. I don't think we've seen exactly that yet, actually, because Lee is playing Izzet Drakes, which is super low to the ground. So he is not messing around. It's just 4 Arclight Phoenix, 4 Enigma Drake, 4 Crackling Drake, and 0 Goblin Electromancers. And that's why you see so many more 1-mana sorceries in instance compared to the other builds that can play Radical Idea and so on.
Okay, on the other side of the table, we had a chance to watch Ivan Floch play this Jeskai control deck a little bit yesterday, and it looks like we get a chance to see it again today. Can you give us a big picture on a matchup like this? This isn't your traditional, aggro versus mid-range or control versus mid-range or anything like that. This is a little bit different coming from the Izzet side of things.
Exactly, and that's because the threats of the Izzet deck, which is of course the aggro role, which has to take the aggro role in this matchup, the threats are difficult to handle for a Jeskai control deck. So the 4 toughness on Crackling Drake and Enigma Drake, and the fact that Arclight Phoenix just threatens to come back over and over again, makes it very difficult for Floch to use his 1-for-1 removal spells.
By the way, check this out. Lee Shi Tian, it's turn 3 here. He's already got 5 spells in the graveyard, all costing 1 mana and all replacing themselves.
So perfect use of mana thus far, but in the end, Floch doesn't really care about these instants or sorceries in the graveyard. Sure, the Crackling Drakes are going to be bigger, but Floch knows he needs to deal with those anyway. Floch, by the way, with 2 treasure maps, so maybe taking a page out of Adrian Sullivan's book, but not going overboard with them. I'm looking at the main deck configuration, and there are a few cards in Floch's deck in particular that are not going to be very good in this matchup. In particular, the Deafening Clarion is just something that Lee can play around really easily. On the other hand, there are cards that he has to be very aware of, especially the exile effects, Seal Away and Settle the Wreckage, but also a high amount of counter magic. Essence Scatters and Sinister Sabotage can just stop his Drakes in particular.
By the way, Lee Shi Tian, perfect on mana thus far. 10 of a possible 10 he's used up here on turns 1 through 4. Look at that graveyard. Doesn't really matter at this point, but this is Arclight Phoenix, and did Lee just pass?
He ships. He plays around Seal Away, apparently.
Yeah, which, by the way, Floch has in his hand, so expert play there from Lee Shi Tian, understanding the types of cards that his Arclight Phoenix may be vulnerable to, and at least eliminating a few of those options.
There might even be something that could be really cool to watch, which is Lee knows that these exile effects exist, and by not attacking, he's not going to play around them forever. But what you can do is you can attack with your Arclight Phoenix, and then when it's threatened by a Steal Away or a Settle the Wreckage, you shock it. And Shock is one of the weakest cards in the matchup because you're not doing much else with it. Of course, you can try to shoot down a Teferi with it, but ultimately, it has to be maybe the weakest card in the main deck.
And then that, of course, lets you get it back into your graveyard and then maybe get it back the next turn. And this deck certainly seems built to be able to get an Arclight Phoenix back much more so than any other deck in the format.
Absolutely, yes. Especially with the Maximize Velocity. If you have a Jumpstart card, it's really simple, but you do have to manage your resources carefully. It is still very possible to... It's kind of like flooding out, although in this case it means having 6 lands, not 10.
Interesting here, by the way, you mentioned that Floch dabbling in the treasure map game here. He's got 2 of them in the deck, but he's actually drawn both of them here. I wonder what that means for how this game plays out.
I do like I do like how Flock is basically saying, I have the seal away, but if you don't attack, I'm just going to scry twice with my treasure maps, and I'm also going to pull ahead.
Boy, I'll tell you what, he needs something right here because Crackling Drake plus maximize velocity is a huge attack.
Yeah. And this is, once again, pretty smart. It's not
an attack for what, 11?
Yeah, we're going to see 8, 9,
12.
Yeah, because
the 8 is 7 +1 from the velocity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it is for 11.
Yeah.
And this is really smart by Lee, who is now forcing Flock to use an exile effect on something other than the Phoenix.
And that's exactly what happens here. Seal Away is going to take care of Crackling Drake and reduce 11 down to just 3 damage. There's Teferi off the top of the library, though, for Yvonne Flock. Does he have a land? No. Maybe. Oh, yeah, he does. There's a Clifftop Retreat right there. So options here for Yvonne.
And that looks super strong because there is a second seal away in his hand.
There he is. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, hits the battlefield. Plus it, draw a card, find a Crackling Drake, untap a couple of lands. And pass it back, like you said, with Seal Away. Yvonne runs 3 Seal Away in his Jeskai control deck. There's a crash through. Isn't going to do much here.
Now, Lee is now trying to find a second Phoenix. Doesn't go all in and doesn't cast all of his cards here.
Flock declines to play.
Wow, what a cool play.
I'm sorry.
Anything else and just lets Teferi take a hit.
That's a play that does surprise me.
Right, even a shock, which, as you mentioned before, was normally a fairly dead card in the matchup, would be pretty useful here. Generally speaking, the control players don't want to turn on cards like that from their opponent, but perhaps Flock has something big lined up for next turn.
I think
in conjunction with that treasure map.
Yeah, if you ask me, he really wants those activations because every land that he finds or just flipping the treasure map, which is already on one counter, is huge with his hand being so many card advantage spells.
Yes.
He doesn't really need that Teferi to survive. And sure, if he trades it for a shock in this kind of spot, it's not the end of the world.
Right, and then the other thing to consider from Flock's perspective is that Lee has to have the shock to really get punished here, and it turns out he doesn't.
And if he does, then you get to seal away the Phoenix for good. So it is not an intuitive play, but it is a very smart play.
Classic Yvonne Flock.
Well, yeah, I'm not surprised, but it does take a certain vision of how this game is going to play out.
Right. Right now, Flock is resolving his second treasure map activation here, trying to decide if you'd like to keep that card on top of the library or not.
Actually, a little lesson here from exactly this sequence. It's very easy to think when you're in Lee's seat here, oh, he let that damage resolve, he must not have anything.
Good point.
Or he might be weak, that you might be sensing weakness when the opposite is true.
That is such a good point too, Simon, because one thing that we'll note is when Lee said, I'll attack your Teferi, he had already made the decision. Flock already knew I'm not going to be casting this. So he just said, sure, down to 2. And, that's a key thing. Having thought that through on the turn prior, if he would have then looked at a card in his hand and said, fine, I guess I'll just let Teferi take it. That could give away quite a bit about what's going on in hand.
Very different story.
Yeah, these turns are just going to be very explosive here, though, for Flock. He plays Crackling Drake. And thanks to Teferi, he'll have 3 lands to work with going the other direction, but he is looking to be in very good shape here against Lee Shi Tian in game number 1.
Whose deck is not really performing all that well. There's only a single Arc-like Phoenix. That's probably what makes the difference. If you draw 2 of them, I could see this matchup be a lot tougher for the Jeskai control deck.
Yeah, he's seen a lot of cards. A Beacon Bolt's going to be used to kill that Crackling Drake and potentially clear the way for the Arclight Phoenix to get in and kill Teferi, at least from Lee's perspective. Though we know better. Lee has shock now. And here we go. The trap has been sprung here by Ivan Floch. He's going to use Seal Away. Kind of force the issue here on Lee.
Lee does have that shock play available to him now, but it's looking less good with every turn that goes by.
Right. Perhaps still necessary, so he is going to do that, but could be bad here for Lee Shi Tian, as this is yet another turn going by where Teferi is on the battlefield and Ivan Floch is just generating such huge advantage of off of Teferi turn after turn. Next turn, we could easily see Niv Mizzet Perun hit the battlefield as well.
We are especially going to see some treasures, and that kind of mana availability for the Jeskai control deck is going to be huge.
Yeah.
Lee in the difficult position of trying to find the 14 on the 12-sided die there. too many instants and sorceries in his graveyard.
Yeah, that is a tough spot to be in for sure. The story of this game, though, from Lee Shi Tian's perspective, right, is just lack of threats, right? He's found one Arclight Phoenix and one Crackling Drake, and that's been it.
Yep.
Look at the graveyard. I mean, Lee's cast 15 spells this turn, and 3 have mattered.
The full playset of Crash Throughs and Warlord's Fury. We said that Shock is kind of the weakest card in the matchup, but we found a use for it. With these other cards, they are just cyclers. They're not going to do anything else because this is not a creature-based matchup where you have to punch through with your Crackling Drake.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that there is always going to be a window of opportunity for Lee if he finds a Crackling Drake and gives it haste with maximized velocity.
Okay.
So that's something that Floch has to be super aware of, especially when we're reaching a point where the number of instants and sorceries is just very close to Floch's life.
Yeah, I mean, even that play that you just mentioned would leave Floch at 1.
Yeah.
So Floch is going to remain patient here, though, and cast Chemister's Insight, looking to hit land drops, and then pass the turn back once again. Still in a beautiful position with 7 cards in hand, an active Teferi, 2 treasure maps, both of them ready to transform, and facing down nothing, just 0. Land go here from Lee Shi Tian. What a terrible position to be in for him. Very much the leader of this Hong Kong team. Not only is he one of the best players in Hong Kong, he's one of the best players in the world.
And we could say similar things about Floch.
That you think he's one of the best players in Hong Kong? I guess when he's there, he is.
Yeah.
So double treasure map here into double treasure cove. The dollar bills are flowing here for Ivan Floch. Look at this. Boom, boom, boom. Looks like he ran out of treasure tokens. There they are. See, I like it like this better. I don't like putting a die on top.
I agree. Even worse on creatures, because then there's always this potential confusion.
Look at that hand from Floch.
Yeah, 20 cards in hand, 20 mana.
Yeah.
Active Teferi.
What a crazy mana jump as well. He now has 8 more mana than he did the turn prior.
And it's also with the treasures, it's kind of this threat of activation. You know that you are giving your opponent, the opponent has the option to respond with all these treasures, but they don't have to. So they can, if you don't force them to respond and use their mana, they're just going to draw more cards and bury you in card advantage. So it's really a situation that you can almost not escape from. There was actually an out for Lee, I believe, which surrounded the one main deck Entrancing Melody in his deck. If if Floch is really not careful and just slams the Niv Mizzet at a moment where Lee can take it over, I could see the Jessica control like losing this somehow. But of course, Floch is too experienced to expose Niv Mizzet like that.
Well, here's Fight with Fire now. And he could take out both Niv Mizzet Perun and Teferi with this kicked Fight with Fire.
Chances of that resolving?
Very low. There's a negate. Oh, boy. And there's another damage. So the end result of that was Lee Shi Tian has taken 2 damage. And Yvonne Floch has drawn a couple of extra cards. So if that was your best play, that is not going to get the job done. The real question in my mind now is how much more can Lee Shi Tian take? Perhaps looking to see if there's any unexpected inclusions in Floch's Jeskai control deck here. We are playing Team Unified Standard, so sometimes the decks look a little different than they would normally. But as it stands, this one is very much in the books.
Absolutely. And the thing is, Lee can look at these other 2 tables and see that there's Selesnya tokens and Golgari midrange. So it's not even like there's a red deck that is taking some of the Jeskai control cards.
Right. Oh yeah, that's not good news for you, Lee Shi Tian. He tried to untap there, but the truth is that this is just the beginning. Lee Shi Tian could easily end up dead this turn.
It's funny how many cards you can suddenly draw with your with Niv Mizzet and that much mana.
I mean, how many cards does Yvonne Floch have in his hand right now? 12, 14? I bet you it won't even fit on our screen at this point. Well, that isn't all of them. Our poor card spotter standing behind. Look at that grip.
Yeah.
Look at how many cards.
Being the spotter when somebody's drawing 5 cards a turn is not that much fun.
It looks like 13 cards in hand for Yvonne Floch. I think he's just trying to figure out if he can win right now. I guess not.
I mean, every opt is going to deal 2 damage.
Yeah, and he has a Chemister's Insight. That's another 3.
But if he has all these instants to win with, he can also just pass the turn and see what happens and what develops.
Right.
He has 2 more damage in these treasure coves if he wants to.
Discards a bunch of lands on end step to get back down to 7 cards.
And the only real out that Lee has is Crackling Drake into maximize velocity. Because you're not going to get another turn.
Right, and we know that that's not an actual out anyway. There's Entrancing Melody, so the one of does show up. And, you know, to be honest, Floch will probably be happy to have seen that.
Well, to be fair, it's probably not going to stay in the main deck. So,
okay,
at least I would be very surprised.
Makes sense.
I know I'm losing, but
Lee's just having too much fun here for facing down a player who's got another 10 cards now or whatever in hand and is about to kill him, and that is finally going to do it. Lee Shi Tian says, okay, you got me. And that is game number 1 going to Yvonne Floch. While we were watching, it looks like Hong Kong on the top table there, Wu picked up game number 1 for Team Hong Kong. So they've split. They've split game ones. Now Lee's going to lean over and help out his teammate.
And that table is a little bit delayed because I believe they were the ones that got the deck check.
You're right. But we can still jump in and see what's going on.
Carnage.
Wow, this is a very aggressive attack here. Oh, I suppose the Midnight Reaper helps stem the bleeding there, but this is necessary as Vivian Reed is on 8 loyalty. And, well, has to go.
But how is this ever going to be a winning attack?
Right, I don't know.
37 life is an impressive number.
That's true.
And I think Dadiko making a smart move here, just saying Vivian, whether she has 2 or 5 counters is not that relevant. I'm not going to let you draw more extra cards than absolutely necessary. So just getting rid of the Reaper here.
Interesting, yeah. Valuing a random card off the top of the library more than a Jadelight Ranger on the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it.
Yep. And 3 loyalty on Vivian Reed. So it was definitely a cost, but it's about not losing a game in which you are that far ahead.
Yeah,
right?
I think we might see finality here as well from Dadiko, and that is going to leave him in a very good position.
Once you've resolved finality and you have a Carnage time, which is a 9/8, it's really, really difficult to come back for the other player.
Even a Wild Growth Walker to follow up, and still, of course, has Vivian Reed fueling the fire as well, and that is going to be game number 1 going to the team from Hong Kong. So 2 game 1s go to Hong Kong, 1 to Slovakia in the early stages. I'll remind you, by the way, that we're in stage 2 here in day number 2 of pool play, and what that means is that these teams have already gotten out of their pool the first half of the day, and we're just entering the second half of the competitive portion of today. And what that means is that they need to win 2 of the 3. If you can win 2 of the 3 matches in your pool, you will advance to the top 8. And that is what's on the line here on day number 2. So this would be a big step in that direction. The winning team from this round says, okay, we've got 2 rounds to win 1 of our 2 matches, and if we do so, we lock up our top 8 slot. That is a big, big, big deal, especially when you contrast it, Simon, with the opposite, where you lose this and you go, we have no wiggle room. We have to win our next 2 matches. That's a tough sell.
It is actually pretty elegant because it's always clear you need those 2 wins out of 3. And of course, if you just breeze through, you even have a round to relax.
So Boros Angels, a deck that, well, we haven't seen yet in our commentary time. Playing against Selesnya Tokens, a deck that we've seen a lot of, but it was the Angels deck that was able to get the job done in game number 1. We'll see if sideboarding helps out in either direction here.
Hong Kong actually on a, well, they have Golgari mid range, so that is not unusual. But with the Boros Angels deck and the way they built their Is It Drake's deck, they are definitely deviating from the norm quite a bit. The Is It Drake's deck that Lee is piloting looks very different from almost every other Drake list in the tournament. Lee is a very good deck builder, and if you ask me, also metagamer. So these kind of small formats with the unified structure, he will have put in quite a lot of effort understanding how you want your decks to look like, and especially I think the Is It Drake decks that he's playing, he has exactly those choices, how to tune the deck to fit his playstyle and the metagame.
All right, here's one of the powerful plays from this Boros deck. Plays a much more mid-range game than some of the more aggressive builds that you've seen in the past, but here's History of Benalia. That is common to all of these type of decks.
You might have been surprised at the Lava Coil, because taking out a 1/1 lifelinker is usually not what you want your premium removal spells to do. But this game is something where Boros Angels is trying to play the mid-range strategy, is trying to play the late game, and the Selesnya Tokens deck has this kind of exponential value growth, utility growth with Convoke, with Venerator Loxodon, with pump effects. And by taking care of that 1/1 lifelink, you're kind of making every follow-up weaker. You're reducing the impact of Venerator Loxodon, of March of the Multitude, of the probability of Legion's Landing flipping. All these small things kind of add up and explain this turn 2 play.
Okay, Knight Token number 2 hits the battlefield while Knight Token number 1 gets into the red zone. Ooh, this is the scary stuff here. If you're sitting in Hornonsky's seat, you're looking at this like, double history. That is always tough to beat.
History is the mirror breaker when we're talking about the white matchups. Now, of course, Boros Angels also has another late game plan, but just drawing 2 history when your opponent has 0 and isn't even casting spells is absolutely huge.
Now, there has to be a March of the Multitudes or something in the hand here for Hornonsky, right? Yeah, okay, there we go. Because that's just way too much mana to have 4 cards and do nothing. I mean, it's either that or you're on 4 lands.
I agree. I am surprised, though. Last turn, we didn't see a play. And now when you look at Hornonsky's hand, you see that both of these cards could have been cast. I understand that March of the Multitudes wasn't a great option. Concave Tribunal on a history on 1 doesn't feel great, but it's definitely a play that you have to consider.
Yeah, and look at this. 4, 8, 12 damage crashing into the red zone. And history repeats itself. Next turn, it'll be the same thing again, except for with an additional night token ready to go. And this game could just be over at that point. I mean, March of the Multitudes is a strong card, but on its own here, it's not going to be enough. Wow, and look at this. Rekindling Phoenix, too, from Wu. So make 3 1/1s with lifelink, but that's cute.
Irrelevant.
Right, they're just tiny.
They can attack now if you want to flip the Legion's Landing, and then they are just getting eaten by these knights. The fact that the tokens, the creatures on Wu's side are just bigger, so huge here. This matchup does seem really good for Boros Angels.
It sure does.
With a similar early game, not quite as powerful maybe as Selesnya tokens when we're looking at the extreme draws, but on average, you should be able to get to those 4-5 mana, and those flyers seem superb in against a deck that's just trying to clog up the ground.
Well,
too late.
This one's a little too late to the table. Basically a 3-mana 2/2, but the freight train's coming next turn. All of those night tokens are going to get +2/+1 on the side of Wu, and right-click attack all, right, Simon? Just send them in.
Absolutely, and you can just, I mean, you can chump block. You can basically trade your March of the Multitudes for the damage that the knights are going to deal.
But that is just not a good long-term winning strategy.
That's just a one-shot effect, effectively, and it's not like Wu is out of gas in any way.
Oh, jeez. You're not kidding. All right, here they come. 4, 8, 12, 16. This would leave you at 2. Sure. So Hornonsky's going to fall down to 2 and lose 2 of the tokens in the process, but there's Lyra Dawnbringer to join the fray here as well. And, you know, this Selesnya tokens deck just not known for being out from being so far behind.
Yep. And Slovakia is in trouble. Look at the scoreboard. Boros Angels is going to take this down. Flock needs to win his game. And then Niznansky needs to come back from being down a game in the mirror match.
Right, so this is already off to a bad start here for Slovakia. Now, we are not watching an elimination match this time. So if you're cheering for Slovakia at home, it's not over yet, even if they do lose this one. But still, we mentioned it a minute ago, not where you want to be in pool play, facing down the prospect of needing to win back-to-back rounds just to make it to the top 8. All right, so what do we have going on here? It looks like Ixalan's Binding. Critically, Ixalan's Binding, by the way, has taken this this Crackling Drake down and perhaps stranded a few extra in hand. We'll find out shortly.
Ixalan's Binding seems huge against a deck that only has 3 different threats.
Right.
Actually, 3 in the sideboard for Ivan Flock. Interesting choice.
And this blue-red deck, they don't have any way to deal with the binding, right?
That would be against the color pie.
Yeah, sometimes you can return
bounce
The
something.
binding to hand, and then
Mhm.
maybe cast 2 of them.
No, I think what you have to do is you have to use a card like Dive Down in response
Save your creature.
to get around it.
Sure. Disdainful Stroke, something like that.
You can bring in Nif Mizzet yourself, so then you are up to 4 threats that the Jessica control deck has to worry about. Oh, I think
I feel like
Dadiko just won.
Yeah, Dadiko might have had just finished this one because this game was not over yet, and we saw a handshake. Waiting to get an update on that to see if that was the case, but that is my assumption at this point. Hong Kong picking it up and advancing here. Now, what they need to do is win one of the next 2 rounds to make it into the top 8. So this was a very, very large step in that direction, but they're not quite there yet.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm assuming that down on that near table must have just ended there.
Yeah, you can see that they are packing things up, de-sideboarding, it looks like.
Yeah, and that is confirmed there. So Hong Kong is going to be one of the good. Lee Shi Tian could not be happier about it, especially considering the fact that he got thumped in game number 1 and wasn't looking super great in game number 2 either. And his teammates took care of business for him there.
But there was brilliant strategy. Lee just occupied Flock long enough for the teammates to take it down.
That is very, very smart move there. And it did, in fact, work out. So we have Hong Kong, 1 to the good. They need to win one of the next 2 rounds. For Slovakia, though, they're up against it. And these are elimination rounds now for Slovakia
From now
going
on.
forward. Right. They need to win, and then they'll find themselves in the top 8. If they don't, they're done. And that's the way it's going to work. We've got 16 teams left. We're in pool play where they're grouped into 4, and only 2 of each will be able to go on. That'll cut the field in half by the end of this 3-round stretch, and that'll leave our top 8, which will come back tomorrow, of course, to bring you. So great stuff from the feature match area this round. But we've got a lot more Magic to bring you over the course of the weekend going forward as well. Simon, what are you looking forward to?
Well, I really like the decider games that we
Yeah.
are showing because it's kind of difficult to follow the whole tournament. We are not set up to show you all the tables in
Sure.
every single round, but we do get to see the one game that matters, and you can feel the stress. I mean, I think it's almost a little bit unfair. Imagine you're sitting there, you're maybe at your first Premier level event, and then they tell you, oh yeah, for your final deciding game against Andrea Mengucci, have a seat. And
Yeah. Yes,
Please.
those are all cameras
Yeah.
around you, by the way.
start playing.
Yeah, good luck with it. And of course, we also have the team aspect here, though. You're not alone in that situation. You'll have your teammates to guide you through that as well.
Yeah, and that's actually the final game is always a 3-on-3.
Yes.
It's not a 1-on-1.
No.
And I do like the communication aspect a lot. You do have to watch, for pace of play, what is, within the boundaries of stopping somebody from making a play. But ultimately, the challenge that the smaller nations in particular face when they have a superstar like Ivan Flock and then 2 less known players, and Flock has to he has to manage a lot of things,
Yes,
right? And he's kind of famous for doing that actually year after year.
Yeah, that is a tough seat to be as the captain, but that's what you get when you're the best player from your country. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll have a decider here for stage 2 of day 2. We'll see you after that.
All right, so our main match is done in the feature match area, but I can tell you that we are moving another feature match into the area. Now, Germany were among the favourites coming into this tournament, and they are down on the floor. And once again, as luck would have it, who are they up against? Well, it's Italy. We can't get them out of the feature match area, it seems. Every round they've been in there virtually today. Mengucci against Hauk, and so on. So there's going to be more live magic in just a little bit. But down on the floor, we've got an interview coming right up, and here it is.
All right, I'm here with Hong Kong's Lee Shi Tian, Hall of Famer, Magic Pro League competitor, and now one match win away from getting into the top 8 here at the World Magic Cup. What's the best finish for Hong Kong at this event?
We lost a win in 3 years ago, I think. 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay, so
Top 16. Top 16, yeah.
Okay, so you're there right now. You're looking to do one better. Constructed has been a big part over the last 2 days. You're one of the great constructed players in the history of the game. So this is really must have been. You must be doing a lot of hard work here.
Actually, I only won one match of constructed this event so far, and yeah, I think we picked a good combination of decks into the event. Yeah, so we bring Boros Angel, Black Queen, and Drakes. Like before the tournament, the default lineup is Drake, Golgari, and the Boros Mini, but then somehow the green-white token deck pops up, and then people are playing Jeskai Control, green-white token, and Golgari. Like this, I think this is one of the most common lineup in this event. And then it turns out it's good for us because green-white token is actually not that good against BG like Golgari and the Boros Angel. So yeah, we choose a deck like long ago, and then the meta game just shift in our way. So we're kind of getting lucky here.
So you're waiting for the result of Finland and Hungary, and then you'll play them, and if you win against them, you'll advance.
Yeah, it's because we go like 7-0 now so far. So next one will be our win and we got 2 win and hopefully we can get there.
All right, Lee Shi Tian, the Hall of Famer, he's got 2 win-ins coming up. If he can get the best result for Hong Kong at the World Magic Cup, we'll see how he does.
We certainly will. Now, we're used to 3 of us at the desk. Wait, look who it is. It's 2-time world champion Shahar Shenhar. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great.
Congratulations on a great run so far with Israel. How are you getting on in Pool 2?
Well, we won our first round of the stage 2. So,
wow.
Yep,
Great job,
Yeah,
Shahar.
we just need to win one more in the next 2.
Mm-hmm. So I was thinking back to the World Championship in Nice. And
that was a long time ago.
Yeah, and in 2014, someone decided it'd be a great idea to run the World Magic Cup beside the World Championship. So you were basically, sort of drafting in the morning. It wasn't quite drafting in the morning in one tournament and playing constructed in the afternoon, but that was like 5 days of mayhem. How do you look back on that now, particularly the team aspect of it, whilst you were trying to become a world champion?
Yeah, looking back, I must have been so exhausted because I'm exhausted right now and I haven't even played the World Championship this weekend. So that was a tough competition. Yeah, I mean the World Magic Cup, it's one really long tournament, and then there's the World Championship, which is another really long tournament, so it's tough.
It seems especially hard for the teams where the captain is super experienced but has 2 younger players, less experienced players. I think you have one of these teams.
Yes, I've had that. That's been the case for as long as I've captained.
Right, I think because you're one of those countries where you are demonstrably the best player in the country. We're not going to blush about that. You clearly are. And then there is that gap because not a lot of Israelis have played a lot of, Yuri Peleg, of course, a world champion, 2007 in New York, but there isn't a big community of pros that can grow together necessarily.
There is a big community, but they're not pros yet, so we'll see in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and of course, which brings us rather neatly to the idea of visibility and aspiring and role models. Mm-hmm. And here we are with the MPL, the Magic Pro League, which you're going to be a part of.
Yeah,
congratulations!
Super excited. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
awesome.
There are going to be, in the way that there wouldn't have been 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there are going to be people back at home tuning into you every week, watching you stream and going, "I'm 8 now, but in 10 years' time, that can be me." How does that how do you deal with that kind of notion?
It's pretty surreal. I mean, I don't really know how I deal with it because it hasn't happened yet. But ask me in a couple months, and
But you can
we'll
see
have a better
that's
answer.
coming, right?
Yeah, I see it. Yeah,
We can all
first
see
see
it's,
it.
it's such a game changer because I'm one of these players of the Uri Pelek era.
Yep.
10 years ago, if somebody asked me, can you do this professionally? I could say, if you win a lot, if you have good sponsorships, if you do articles, if you do videos, maybe streaming started around that time, maybe a few years later. But now I can say, look at this guy.
Yeah.
He's earning 75K being a Magic Pro, and that's without the winnings.
Yeah. Where were you when you found out about this? Because I imagine it's one of those things you're probably going to remember.
I mean, I was in Israel in my room. I had a Skype call. So I was just in my room, Skyped, and yeah, that's where I was.
And
I remember it.
Did you know what they were going to say? I mean, was it sort of prepped? It's like, hey,
No, I didn't.
So-
It was more like, you have a Skype call with Watsy. I'm like, all right, I've had those before. Let's see what happens. And this is by far the best one. It's really my
Really?
favorite.
I don't think I want to know about the other ones. that you
No,
had.
they're not bad.
No,
They're
okay.
just
That's great.
All right. As far as streaming goes, is that something you've dabbled in or not touched at all, or
I've dabbled in, but I'm not. I'm certainly an amateur. I've streamed once by myself, and then I've streamed with other people who are actual streamers, but I haven't streamed a lot myself. No.
Okay, well, if you haven't got anything better to do, we certainly haven't. We're going to go down to the feature match
No,
area
I
now
don't.
and watch a little bit of Magic. So why don't we head on down with our special guest, Shahar Shenhar. We are underway. There you see the battlefield, and a duress is underway, and this is Christian Halk with Golgari midrange against Selesnya tokens on the Italian side
that's
of
Tian
the board.
Moon sitting there with Selesnya tokens. He's been battling that deck all day, of course. Thank you, Rich. And why don't we get underway here and see what's going on? Looks like there was a turn one duress to take away, something that would have come much later, Shahar, the Immortal Sun. How important is taking that away here?
Yeah, that's really important. I mean, so early on, maybe it's not as important because you need 6 mana, but that's a very crucial card to have against Golgari.
Were you playing, or are you playing both of these decks in your lineup as well?
We have a Golgari deck, but we don't have a Selesnya. We have, on the A seat, we have Boroswini. I'm playing at the B seat, Is It Drakes, and we have Golgari.
Mm-hmm.
Here's Golgari, of course, for Christian Hauk here, and he's got the nice Wild Growth Walker. That card's done a heck of a lot of work today, though the follow-up play not too exciting here
Not
for
an
him.
explorer.
Yeah, Druid of the Cowl and a land. Next turn could be some business, though.
You have to watch out for the cards in Hauk's hand, though. 2 Golden Demise.
Whoa.
That could turn around this board very, very quickly.
2 Golden Demise, and then there's a Settle the Wreckage on the other side. So this is going to be a control on control from mid-range to mid-range.
Both players have the ability to clear off the board from each other, although in Christian's spot, he can do it multiple times. This is basically just trading for a History of Benalia, but I'll tell you what, when you're sitting across from a History of Benalia, you're pretty happy to be able to just trade one card and not take anything from it.
For sure.
And that also justifies the decision to go for the Immortal Sun right away. Even though it's such a late-game card, you can see how both of these players, after sideboarding, are heading to a much longer game.
Yeah, Christian boarding in the duress for the Immortal Sun certainly is a tell that he's trying to be the control player.
We're also in game 3, so he probably saw some of these cards, the Immortal Sun, or also Settle the Wreckage. If you lose your, 1 or 2 Carnage Tyrants to that, maybe a duress is a good card to bring in.
Interesting here as well, we talked about that he didn't have a follow-up Explorer creature a turn ago, but now he's played one and then finds another one. He has a Jadelight Ranger now on top of his library as well. And he's even going to go ahead and attack in with that Wild Growth Walker. Take a look at the hand from Tian Moon here. March of the Multitudes, that Settle that we talked about before, and another removal spell with Ixalan's Binding to go with, looks like a redundant copy of Amara, Soul of the Accord.
Good reason to attack with her.
Right, so Moon says, well, look, I get a 1-1 out of the deal, and I actually have a play for the turn this way, so I'm just going to go ahead and trade off. And that's exactly what happens.
Yep, seems like a fine trade.
I don't know about you guys, but the times where I've seen the Selesnya deck do really impressive things hasn't convinced me. It has been too often this kind of, I'm sitting here with 5 lands and 3 power on the board.
You said you're not running Selesnya in your
No, we're
team.
not.
Is that why? Did you find it just underwhelming, or what
We
was the reason?
thought that it was Golgari was a better deck out of the green decks, and the Selesnya deck wants a lot of the green cards that Golgari has. For example, Mun doesn't have Vivian Reed because Menguchi is piloting Golgari midrange, so there's a deficit here on Vivian Reeds
I see.
between the two. The Immortal Sun is the most important card, though, so especially if you don't have Vivian Reeds or access to them.
Right, that's your big late game punch to keep
Right.
the fuel going on the fire. Here comes a Jade Light Ranger now from Christian Hauk, which is going to fuel up this Wild Growth Walker to get into the red zone once again.
Now that we have you here, Shahar, how important do you think is it who plays against whom? You see actually here that these three players on both teams are playing the same decks, but you have different matchups across the board. Is that a huge factor in how the matches play out?
I mean, it's absolutely a huge factor. It's also, like, to me, it seems impossible to predict. So there's a lot of variance in that. Like, for example, my teammate has played the mirror match, the Golgari mirror match in the C seat 4 times now, which is like, we couldn't possibly predict that people are going to put Golgari in the C instead of the A. That's 50-50, right? So.
Yeah, I always have this issue as well. You go to a team tournament, and then there's, of course, we're all gamers, right? We want to game the system.
Of course, yeah.
We want to understand, is there some edge of putting something in the middle, or how is the strength of the players going to distribute it? And in the end, you might be witnessing something, but it's such a small portion of the actual field that, because we see Golgari in the center seat a lot here on our perspective.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, I've been in the center and I haven't played it yet. So
there you go.
Again, just completely random. It's very hard to predict it.
Hauk still sitting on that second copy of Golden Demise here, but Ajani has entered the battlefield now for Tianmun, and that could really put a clock on how good Golden Demise is actually going to be here if Hauk can't find a way to deal with Ajani.
There's a Doom Whisperer coming in. Yeah.
Oh, hello. There's a way to deal with an Ajani.
That's actually the perfect answer if it gets through next turn.
Yeah.
Right. We did see, though, that there was a good answer for a Doom Whisperer in hand here for Tianmun, and that was the Ixalan's Binding.
Yeah, that Planeswalker was very crucial for Moon because he has all this removal in his hand. He just needed some way to actually get in with card advantage.
Yeah, he had a kind of a weird controlling draw here, but he's going to use the minus ability on Ajani to get Amara back onto the battlefield as well.
And at the same time...
and it looks like he's going to pass the turn back, perhaps looking to leverage that Settle the Wreckage here.
It's so risky, though.
Yeah, boy, if he gets duressed here, he's going to be bummed about that.
It's not only risky because of the duress, but also spending your Settle the Wreckage is your only out to actually beat the Tyrant, which Christian actually has in his hand. So
even if this goes according to plan, you're still strategically not putting yourself in the best spot. I honestly haven't been impressed by the Settle the Wreckage in particular from the game plan surrounding it.
Yeah, but now it makes a lot more sense for Christian to bring in the duresses, seeing the Settle the Wreckage.
Looks like the German team, quite a strong team here, by the way. Both Mark Tobias and Christian Hauk, have been at or near the top levels of the professional game over the course of the past, call it 2 to 3 years. One or the other of them. Right now, Christian Hauk actually is kind of the peak of German Magic.
Yeah, and you can argue who of those is the better player, but that's not really the point. The point is that Mark Tobias just went to German nationals and crushed everyone.
Yes.
And then now they are both on the team, making them one of the best German teams ever at a World Magic Cup.
And here it is. Plan A now for Tianmun to play this Settle the Wreckage and get rid of the Doom Whisperer. It looks like Hauk is going to take advantage of the activated ability on Doom Whisperer before Settle the Wreckage resolves, though I think one of his teammates is also pointing to the fact that, well,
if you're shuffling
go get the land and shuffle. So.
Right. You could throw some lands in your graveyard if you want.
You could. That's your best
deck
case.
thinning.
Yeah.
Love it.
I mean, when you're at 27... Now, did he surveil for a 6th land the turn before, or at the end of his turn?
I don't know.
I think he surveilled in his upkeep.
Okay, so he does. So he does plan. Oh, I guess not. Seems like the best play for him here would have been to play the Carnage Tyrant, and
yeah, I'm surprised he's not doing that.
He could have other plans.
Jade Light Ranger instead.
I actually thought he would surveil for a duress, But the thing is, if you see something good on top, do you really go deeper? It's tough for. It's easy for us to say because we know exactly what's in these players' hands.
It just depends how good.
But Datelite Ranger, for example,
right, that's a good one.
it's difficult to put that in your graveyard when you are.
Yeah.
It looks like you're doing already quite well for yourself.
Christian's decided to keep Assassin's Trophy on top of the library before passing the turn back now. And there's Tristani off the top of the library for Moon. Tristani can be really strong in this deck, though on this board, she's kind of her normal level of strength, which is still really good. But only 2 other creatures currently. But, as we've often seen, Ajani's going to help out as well.
Yeah, Moon is just developing his board.
And he's going to put some +1 counters on his 2 most powerful creatures as well.
And if you ask me, the planning as Carnage Tyrant is just to have a better
Yeah.
board.
I mean, that's happening quite soon, too. No, Christian still has the Golden Demise, though. So if he has Carnage Tyrant and the City's Blessing, he can actually just wipe out Moon's board and then just kill the Planeswalker. So that's probably his plan here.
Before attackers. The issue is the more turns go by, the bigger these creatures are going to be. So wiping out is not
Correct.
Is getting less and less likely. I think the Assassin's Trophy is part of that plan, because maybe you even have to do it this turn without a Carnage Tyrant. Can we count the permanents real quick? It's only 8.
There are 8 right now.
But this is your chance to still get rid of 4 of these creatures.
So there's the Assassin's Trophy. That's a key piece of the puzzle, because now this will actually leave some of these creatures vulnerable to the Golden Demise.
And even shrinking the Wild Growth Walker by 2.
No, that still kills the Ajani, yeah. Unless he jump blocks.
With the Mora.
Yeah, that's not a great jump blocker.
Right, you don't want to be doing that.
And the Jadelight Ranger can also offer a trade.
So there was no City's Blessing there, right?
No.
Nope.
Otherwise, it would have been a blowout, I think.
Yeah, well, it still looks pretty good.
Is he thinking of not attacking?
No, I think this is just the discussion with his teammate. There's no way that the Walker doesn't attack.
Oh, he's debating on not attacking with the Jadelight Ranger.
Because this one is currently a 2-1.
Yeah.
Right.
So you are trading it. I think it's a fine trade.
Yeah, you're trading that, and also you're killing the Ajani.
Yeah.
So
And
that is definitely
if the Emara chump blocks, you're getting 2 free damage on the Ajani. So it seems like a win either way.
The Germans are working their way towards that conclusion as well, and they have found it.
Methodically.
Mengucci just throws a Johnny into the graveyard for Moon.
Mengucci was growing tired of the German engineering going on there.
Ooh. We have the Immortal Sun up on the graphic. Is that because he just drew
He did
one?
just draw, yeah.
Oh,
and there's a
baby.
march, too.
Okay, so there's some business there.
Who did you test with for the event, Shahar?
Oh, I just tested with my team.
Okay, just 3 people.
Yeah, we were here in Barcelona a week ahead. We had an Airbnb, and we just played sealed or team sealeds, and then just constructed a lot.
2 players playing, 1 player watching.
Mostly me watching.
Telling them what to do.
Yeah, like I took turns because we had a plan that I'm going to be in the middle the entire tournament, so I took turns helping the other person while the other.
So you're
when we
not
had
only
an opponent.
practicing the gameplay, but also the communication
Yeah,
aspect.
it was really important to figure out the dynamic of our team and how we communicate.
Yeah. Very, very easy to underestimate.
Yeah, I've underestimated it before.
Well, the Immortal Sun's going to start going off here, even if the board state does look like it favors Christian Hauck at the moment. Multiple cards per turn, they're all bigger, etc.
City's Blessing.
That's for the Arch of Varazka there. And here we go. Removal spells start picking off creatures one at a time on the other side. The question is, can Moon survive long enough?
Yeah, I mean, that Immortal Sun was so important for him to win.
Gives him a chance.
Yeah, just the perfect top deck. Now he can play March.
Yeah, March is so scary now.
Yeah, March with the Immortal Sun and Amara in play is very, very scary.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're going to see here. Boom. Trigger this, so that's 3 plus another one from Amara.
Yep. It looks like 6.
Yeah.
6 2/2s with lifelink.
And that's nothing you can play around, because if they have it, they have it.
And Christian already spent his Assassin's Trophy the turn before.
That's right.
That's what I was thinking about. Yeah. Now, if you have an Assassin's Trophy for the Immortal Sun,
And it looks like Moon just says, well, I'm going to, make sure that this Carnage Tyrant is dead and also gain as much life as possible in the process. So all 6 of the 2/2 lifelinkers are going to jump in front, meaning 3 are going to die. But that's 12 life gained, and of course the critical permanent Carnage Tyrant taken off of the battlefield.
And Christian just said go.
Boy, this has worked out really nicely for Tian Moon. It turns out ripping the right card at the right time can make all the difference.
Yeah.
That Immortal Sun is powering him to victory now. And by the way, this is extremely important. Take a look here. Remember, we're watching a decider, right? So this is the one that's going to say, well, basically the team that wins this game is going to put themselves in the same position that you find yourself in, Shahar, which is really a nice spot. Being able to take a look at the next 2 rounds and saying, okay, we got to win one of these to advance to the top 8 is the best spot you can be in at this stage of the tournament.
Israel is in that spot. Hong Kong is in that spot.
Italy has had a very stressful day facing Portugal, losing to them in their first round of that pod play, then winning the next 2, including a revenge match against Portugal to take the thing down.
Not the worst play here.
Okay, there's finality to clear the board. Outside of that one Jade Light Ranger left over. Is this the type of thing that can actually swing things back? Remember, the Immortal Sun is still chugging away down there.
Very hard to come back with the Immortal Sun in play. He has to get rid of it somehow.
And Arch of Araska is also still hidden in these lands.
Yeah.
So the amount of card advantage that Man just generates if the game continues.
Oh, he's got another March of the Multitudes.
There it is.
Yeah. That ought to do it.
Yeah, wow, that Immortal Sun was clutch.
Seriously. And Christian Hauck just has to throw that dice to the side, throw his Jade Light Ranger into the graveyard, and
kill
pass
one
the turn
token.
back. Yeah, so brutal. 2 cards off the top of the library. Everything's coming into the red zone. You take 10. I gain 10. And it seems academic at this point. Tian Moon's going to finish things off for Team Italy. Oh, and another March. Come on. And that's going to do it. Team Italy is going to pick up this first win in pool play. Nice camera shot there with the triple handshake going on there as well.
Yeah, we were talking about that yesterday, this idea of the top down. You get this lattice dance of handshakes across the table, all on diagonals and super diagonals. There's probably some mathematical construct that Frank knows for that. But yeah, congratulations. That
you okay, Simon?
I'm okay.
All right.
Okay.
That's my backup team too, buddy. So
you know, the thing is, both players played well. They fought hard. I think the duress on the Immortal Sun showed us already in the very beginning how important that card would be. And then it just turned out to be there at the right time.
Yeah.
So, Shahar, before we were so rudely interrupted by gameplay of the World Magic Cup, we're talking a bit about the MPL and you and streaming. What's your sense? Obviously, you're just starting out and thinking this all through and what life's going to look like. But do you have any sense of what kind of streaming you might look to do in terms of formats or style? Are you going to be?
Well, it's going to be competitive. I'm not going to play the casual formats. There's going to be ranked ladders, so I'm probably going to jump right on that.
Okay.
And just see where that goes.
Okay, and so to what extent do you think that, like when we were growing up in the game, there were these testing teams that were unbelievably secret. You had the French deck that arrived at a Pro Tour in 2002, and then all the other country teams went, did you see what the Dutch brought? And changed everything. We live in a world now where literally there are people preparing for Pro Tours on Arena and Magic Online and just streaming it 3 days before the tournament and going, here's my 74. Yeah. Let's all decide what my 15th card sideboard is going to be. How do you see that in terms of, because we're only about, I would guess, 2 years removed from where every article just before the Pro Tour was, I can't talk about anything meaningful this week, so let's do a grab bag in the mail, right? But now, how do you see it? Are you going to be just running out every week the standard deck on a Tuesday that we're going to see you in the MPL on Saturday, or
no? There's going to be a lot of metagaming because it's a 32-man event, right? So, that's pretty inbred for a tournament compared to like a Grand Prix when there are 1,000 people. It's closer to the World Championship, if anything, and there's always something new, somebody bringing something new.
And you know how to
every
win
time.
those. So.
Yeah.
I didn't say it.
Right, but do you see it therefore as being very much, I'm playing against this person, we're in week 7, for 3 out of the first 4 weeks they played Boros aggro, then they switched to black-green mid-range, they lost, I think they're back on black, red-white. Are you actually likely to put people on things?
No, I think at this the players of this caliber can play any type of deck. They can pilot whatever they think is going to be the best. So I'm not going to just put on someone on white weenie or control because they only play control. They're going to try to move around and do the best to win.
Okay, we have to let you go very soon, but I have one last question, which is 32 of the best players in the world right now, because that's how the MPL was formed. It was, let's look at last year, let's go right from number 1 down to 32. If someone says no, which we know, and Andrew Beckstrom said, no, not for me, I've got a career that I want to carry on with.
Kelvin Chu also.
Right, but that's how we end up with the MPL. Where do you see yourself within the MPL?
You have to ask me this right now?
I do have to ask you. Right now.
I want to know too.
Right now.
Well, I'm going to say 10th.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was nice. I like that.
I mean, you see, I expect everyone to go, I'm somewhere in the middle.
Not everyone. Owen is in the.
Well, I didn't. 10th is not middle.
Owen's in the top 1, obviously. But yeah, okay. So we'll hold you that. Top 10.
Shahar, is this the first job you've had?
No.
Okay.
It's not.
Right.
Is this the best?
I'm not sure if I
Yes,
believe
absolutely. It's the best job I've had.
It's the best job. All right, you get out of here because you've got Magic to play. Just wait 1 sec. We are going to take a very short break. When we come back, we'll look at the pools. We'll see where everything stands. We know this man has a win and in for the top 8 of the World Magic Cup. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.